It's Bigfoot Collectors Club with Bryce, Michael, and Ryan. I know a story of high strangeness or two. Let's do this.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Bigfoot Collectors Club, the show where we talk to amazing guests about their personal paranormal history and share stories of high strangeness. I'm your host, Michael McMillan. With me always is your other host,
Bryce Johnson.
And our super producer,
Riley Bray.
What's up, boys?
What's up,
How's
dog?
it going? How's it
Good.
happening? How's
it
it
feels
going?
like spring is upon us finally, or summer
Spring is
even.
here.
Oh,
Really.
spring has sprung, man. Those flowers are smelling good. Got the jasmine
yeah.
flowing.
All that
Yeah.
heavy
Love it.
rain in LA is really, those April showers brought some May flowers, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Bryce,
My-
you're-
Influencers trampling fields.
My
of
father-in-law
poppies.
was in town not too long ago, and he goes, "You know, all this green is just gonna burn into flames over the summer." And I was like, "Well, you're probably right, but
He is
yeah,
not
for
wrong.
now, let's just enjoy it."
You're Bryce, I don't think we've ever spoken about this on the show, but you are a hashtag flowers of Instagram boy. Like
Yeah, dude, I
you
love,
tend to post pictures of flowers on Instagram.
I'm a sensitive guy. What do you want me to
Yeah.
say? Yeah, no,
Saying
I
it
He
nice.
loves the flowers.
I don't know. There's something about capturing a flower in its bloom because I mean, you know, if you don't capture it, it just I don't know. There's something so magnificent about just that moment. That's it's
Mhm.
very I don't know, maybe spiritual or something, but you know, all that bloom for the whole world to see, and I don't know. I just like sharing it.
You need to start.
I love
You got to
it.
start describing the bouquet, like the smells, like the hints, like ooh, I'm smelling a little bit of walnut and strawberry in this. Like
A little walnuts, right?
yeah,
that's-
get like
yeah.
get
Flowers
your
that you
nose
smell.
down in there.
Yeah, not bad. But I do love my flowers.
Well,
Yeah.
speaking of spring, we have been covering a shit ton of UFO stuff over here. So much so that one of the listeners was like, I think it was Derek Cole, our friend Derek Cole, shout out Derek, who said, "This is wet, hot alien spring." And you might be asking, boys, why aren't you saving all of this stuff, all this content, this good, juicy alien stuff for summertime? Well, we have some big plans for this summer's theme, but we'll be stepping a few feet away from UFOs. But that being said, we do have an annual tradition here, and we need to check in on what's happening in the world of current day. Now, do I say ufology or ufology? Where maybe we'll ask our guest.
Sure.
It's time to check in once again with the host of Somewhere in the Skies podcast and author of the brand new book, Stories from Somewhere in the Skies. Please welcome author, investigator, and all-around good guy, Ryan Sprague.
What's up, guys? I look forward to this every year. I feel like I save everything knowing that hopefully I'll get the call from BCC to come do this. So
Every May.
You're gonna be sick of me by the end of this episode. Trust
I don't
me.
think so. This is an exciting
Never.
time. And also, Bryce, I believe Ryan filled in for you last time he was on the show on the heels of our Men in Black series last
That's right.
May.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you two haven't connected on BCC for a little bit. Now,
Yeah.
Ryan, I don't know how up to date you are with the show. Over on the Patreon, Bryce recently went down a UFO rabbit hole. So I think we should maybe get into where, Bryce, you are on that journey. You can check in with Ryan about that, some of the theories
Yeah.
that you've been
Yeah.
gleaming. But before we get into all that, congrats on the new book, Stories from Somewhere in the Skies. What can you tell everybody about this? I guess it's your third book that you've written?
Yeah. Technically, I wrote a book back in 2016, Somewhere in the Skies, A Human Approach to the UFO Phenomenon, and I re-released that in 2020 with like 80,000 new words. It was basically a new book, but you know, in between those two books, the big New York Times story had hit, and the entire world of UFOs changed. So,
Yeah, you were just a year early on that first book.
I know, man. Wish I had just waited a little longer, pushed it back on the
Procrastinate
publishers.
just
No,
a little
that
longer. You're a
that's a
writer,
good
you know.
thing.
That's
That
what they
puts
do.
you ahead of the
Push that
pulse, man.
deadline.
That lets everybody know that
Good
Ryan was
point.
on this before the New York Times, man.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, thanks, man. But yeah, I came out with a new book literally today, the day we're recording this
wow.
at least. And I've been doing the Somewhere in the Skies podcast since 2017, actually. And I do a series called Witness Accounts, which is very similar to the L Files, where people call in, tell me their UFO stories in their own words. I don't interview them. This is just them telling their stories in their own voices, uncensored, and in their own voice. And it's the most popular part of the Somewhere in the Skies podcast. I think I'm up to almost 29 volumes of this series called Witness Accounts now, where I do 6 or 7 stories in each volume. And eventually I thought, you know what? This would make a really cool book. So I went ahead and I reached out to hundreds of the people who've submitted to this series throughout the years, Michael, including yourself, which I'm sure we'll get to, and said, "Hey, I want to put your story in book form." And every single person said yes. So
Amazing.
I was very honored for that, and that culminated into this book, Stories from Somewhere in the Skies, which is literally the transcriptions from the audio versions of these people's UFO stories. And
Love that.
it's very powerful and eye opening, and it was a great way for me to also revisit these stories, because you guys know when you're making a podcast, it gets very technical. It's almost like a job, and you tend to forget about the actual people behind a lot of this stuff we cover. And it really brought me back to what I do in the UFO field, and that's focus on the human beings and the impact these very powerful UFO incidents can have on their lives. So that's Stories from Somewhere in the Skies.
So
I love
cool.
that. I just, the reason I love that is because, kind of like what we're doing with L Files is like, I feel like maybe for the first time in a long time, there's a platform provided for people to kind of come out of the woodwork and share their stories of high strangeness and their UFO encounters. I remember that old great talk that the late great Stanton Friedman would give at a UFO lecture. He'd say, how many people here believe in UFOs? And everybody'd raise their hand. And then he'd say, how many people have seen a UFO? And, about 20% of people would lower their hand. And then he said, how many people have reported their UFO sightings? And basically all the hands would go down. And, it just goes to show that there's so much more out there on a grand scale, really, that people are experiencing. And I love that you're providing this way for people to kind of feel comfortable to come out and share those stories.
Oh, thanks, man. Well, yeah. And when I first started the Witness Accounts, it was hard. I had to reach out to people. I had to dig and try to find them. Now it's email after email, as I'm sure it is with you guys with L Files. People want to talk about this. It's socially acceptable, and it's crazy. Everyone has a story, whether it's UFOs, ghosts, paranormal, anything. So everyone comes up to you and says, "Hey, UFOs, maybe not so much, but let me tell you about this ghost that I experienced," or vice versa. So I think these topics are more mainstream than ever, obviously. UFOs kind of being at the forefront of that right now, which I'm very grateful for. But yeah, man, it's a safe space for people to come tell it and normalize this topic like never before.
Are there stories that, well, let me rephrase this question. How many percentage of stories contain that you hear, whether they're in the book, made it into the book, but in general, are actual close encounter stories versus,
Right.
and let's go through the scale, like within a 300 feet, or third kind where they're seeing entities, and how many stories are you getting where people feel like they've actually been abducted by aliens?
Right. So, this new book, Stories from Somewhere in the Skies, I broke it down into 3 sections. The first section is sightings, second is close encounters, third is military
Mm.
encounters.
Whoa, cool.
Strictly military encounters that happened on base during service time, which surprisingly, there's a stunning amount. Some in the book that have never been told before.
Wow.
So when it comes to close encounters, I come across them every now and again, Michael. It is rare to have someone say, "I literally saw an occupant." However, that is the second section of the book, so there were enough to really talk about that and dissect that. And you were one of those possible individuals who had a possible close encounter experience.
Yep.
I had several others. A gentleman from New Jersey who literally saw an alien walking down the sidewalk. So there's a story for you. It's
Whoa.
crazy. I had another gentleman who worked security police at an Air Force base and at a nuclear base, nonetheless, and
Yep.
had a really dramatic sighting of a shadow figure inside of one of the most sensitive areas of the nuclear installation. What it was doing there, he doesn't know. He followed it for a couple rooms, wasn't able to find it after that. But this came on the heels of several UFO sightings that had been reported over this nuclear base at the time. So, yeah, it's crazy, man. While they might be a little more rare than your lights in the sky or even craft seen in the sky, they're there and they're still happening today.
God, it
And
makes me wonder if there's a connection between, obviously we've made connecting points between UFO activity as well as poltergeist or what might be considered paranormal activity. But this idea that over this base people were seeing UFOs and then a shadow creature. I mean, that's so much a majority of what we get on the L Files are these shadow entities, and
Mhm.
I'm wondering now maybe that there might be a relation between that and UFO UAP. It just bolsters that idea that somehow, some way, man, all this stuff could be, and should be connected.
I think so. And Bryce, I should also add that your co-host of Expedition Bigfoot, actually, Ronnie LeBlanc, is featured in the book.
Oh yeah,
And
that dude is a conductor of high
oh
strangeness.
my gosh, man,
Yeah.
the story he tells in this book about whether it's psychic things going on or
Mhm.
supernatural UFOs, he, his wife, and his son all had
Yeah.
these experiences at the same time. So I do think there are definitely connections between all of this. And you guys know, the further you zoom out, the more it all starts to seem connected. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. Is I wanted to write a book. I wanted to investigate UFOs. That's what I wanted to do my whole life. But the more I investigate, the more I research, the more I'm starting to realize that it's not just about things in the skies anymore. It's
Mhm.
crazy things happening on the ground and in our minds and in our
people's
hearts and
bedrooms.
in people's bedrooms. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
I want to go back a minute to the story you mentioned about the guy seeing an alien walking down the street or walking down the sidewalk. You mentioned it as well that, I share my story that I've told here on the podcast a number of times about an entity looking in my window and scaring my dogs. How many of these alien encounters or encounters with being fall into the traditional alien gray description, and how are there any that have surprised you?
Most of the stories that have been submitted to the podcast specifically have been of these prototypical gray entities. I know yours was somewhat like that, at least the figure that you had seen. Uh, the gentleman who claimed this also said that it was a gray alien just walking down the sidewalk of New
Hmm.
Jersey, after having seen a UFO with a friend of his.
Oh wow.
So, I mean, did it just hop out and wanted to take a look at the neighborhood? I don't know.
Get a
I
donut?
honestly can't tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, grab a
Just pull it over
donut.
for snacks. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, I would say, Michael, in terms of the research I've done and the stories I've included in my research, it's mostly been these gray entities. However, there's always those who come forward with shadow people, or even these almost human-like aliens that just seem a little off, whether it's in their mannerisms or their eyes, or there's something about them that just doesn't seem right.
Doesn't add up.
Yeah.
It's like they're trying the AI art version of
That's what
trying to
my
look
mind
human, and there's something like the graphics on their t-shirt are not written in any recognizable like language. It looks vaguely Russian for some reason. It always looks vaguely Russian.
Always
cutting-
looks Russian.
They're cutting their Jello with a steak knife and fork.
Yeah, and they have like double pupils in some of the versions that come out.
Well, and the really interesting thing too, I'll close with this, Michael. When it comes to the stories for this book, the beauty of not censoring things is you get to hear the really weird stuff. Like these people are not editing themselves. They're not trying to come across as, as typical as every other story we've ever heard. They're being honest. They're being brutally honest with me about what they saw and how they felt. And there is some strange stuff that people will bring forward. And those are the stories I tend to gravitate towards more than just, I saw a saucer-shaped craft. I saw a black triangle. No, I want to hear the really weird stuff, the stuff that's really hard to make up unless this actually happened.
Can you give us an example of that in the book? Because, we're running out of the times we can mention space pancakes on this podcast.
Right.
We need some new reference. That's going on the kill list soon. So we need some new references of high strangeness.
Absolutely. So I have a case from Fife here in Scotland where I reside right now. And this happened to a gentleman named Tommy back in 1996. And he was riding his bike home with a friend when they saw this strange, like, oil slick on the ground. It was summer, it was hot. So you know how you can kind of see a lot of that sort of stuff on the road when it's really hot on the asphalt.
Mm-hmm.
So they try to go around this thing, and as they're approaching this like oil slick on the ground, it's growing. It's getting bigger and bigger in the road. So they're like, "Whoa, there's like oil or something coming up from the road. That's weird." So the closer they get, it's huge. It's massive at this point, and it starts bubbling, almost boiling on the ground. Right. Just struck oil in the middle of Scotland, and okay, so it could literally be anything. But then Tommy and his friend, they watch, and this bubbling black blob, as he called it, it starts to levitate off of the ground. So whatever this was, it lifted off of the ground, and it just started ascending into the sky. And as it was doing that, he said that everything around it was like wavy and weird, and time seemed to slow down. Whatever it was gave off this extremely like toxic, nauseous odor that they couldn't explain. And they said that it felt like there was electricity all around them.
Whoa.
And this thing didn't come from the sky. This thing came from the ground, went up into the sky, and then eventually disappeared. So there you go, man. The bubbling black blob of Fife is what I titled this.
That's
Yes.
wild.
Wow.
Yeah,
That sounds
talk
like a
about
case
it.
for Tenny. That's got
That's a
Johnny
Tenny
L.
case.
Tenny written
Oh,
all
yeah.
over it.
See, this is what we love. We loved all those, in doing how many 5 years of stories of high strangeness. We always looked for elements that we felt were left out, that people were missing because they were just too weird or too obtuse. And that's where the fun stuff and you can find details and parallels and connecting points. I mean, I know even for like stuff like the BFRO, the Bigfoot Field Research Organization, they throw out everything that gets strange. So if there's any type of orb or UFO or a disappearing Bigfoot, they toss it out. So they're missing so much just gold, in my opinion,
It's part of the data set. The longer you're in this, the more you realize throwing that stuff away helps nobody.
Mhm.
We have this group now in the US government, which I'm sure we'll get to, investigating UFOs. And, if they were to throw away that data, then what the hell is the point of investigating it?
Right.
You're
Right.
not using everything that's being given to you. So I think it's responsible to just get as weird as possible. Embrace the strange, because
Love that.
at the end of the day, it's a part of it. It's not.
Yeah.
We're not going to get anywhere if we start censoring these things and just saying that we're seeing saucers and triangles, because that's simply not the case. I have hundreds of stories to disprove that.
I love that you just said it's responsible to get as weird as possible. That just
It's a mantra
that's
to
a
live your
fucking
life
t-shirt
by.
if I ever heard one. Yeah.
I feel like that's where the fun is, right? I mean, that's the whole point of this show, is finding those goodies, finding those weird bits. That's why we emphasize stories of high strangeness. I feel like that's what John Keel did really well. That's what,
Mhm. Even Jacques
just-
Vallée, yeah.
Yeah, embrace the weird stuff. And then somewhere, I don't know, maybe 80s and 90s, it got so serious and so dark. And, that like, man, I mean, just coming off the heels of the Betty Andreasson multi-parter we did in April,
Yeah.
it's just like the weird shit is where it's at. So let's encourage people to talk about the oil slick that flew into the sky. The more it doesn't fall into a given category, and that's kind of why I asked about the alien grays, the more interested I feel, me personally, I am in it, because it's different. It's bizarre. Give me the bizarre.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, man. And we're living in a world now, again, where UFOs are, like I mentioned, more mainstream than ever. And that has a lot to do with what's going on in the Pentagon right now. And that's great. Like, I'm all for it. I'm pushing for it. I love it. I'm covering it on my show all the time. I know we're going to talk about it. However, there's another part of me that always wants to go back to where I started with my entire UFO research, and that's with the stories of the people, not how big was the craft, how do we have video of it, this that. I just want to hear people's stories, and like you said, the weirder the better. And that's kind of where I'm at. I'm in this weird, as many UFO researchers are, in this weird limbo where half of it's serious government stuff and half of it is aliens making pancakes for some farmer in Wisconsin. It's which is also beautiful that there's such a spectrum when it comes to UFOs. And I think at the end of the day, while frustrating to find answers, the journey in continuing to try to understand UFOs is almost more rewarding, at least to me.
100%.
Amen to that. Yeah.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Listen, I don't know how much time you all spend on yourself in a given week versus how much time you spend on other people. Sometimes life is crazy. You're giving it your all. You're trying to carry the load for everybody, and you're not taking enough time for yourself, which can leave you feeling burnout, stretched thin, all sorts of adjectives that don't make you feel good. Bryce, Riley, how do you guys manage stress in your life? It's got to be tough.
Oh, it's brutal. Other than my 2 kids and wife, the only other adults I talk to are you guys. So having a therapist has been great for me, so I can have adult conversations outside my close inner circle. So yeah, I've been going to therapy for quite a while, and it is a tremendous help. I always come out feeling better than I went in.
Yeah, like a weight's lifted off your shoulder, right?
Yeah.
Therapy was amazing for me because I also discovered that I had been dumping all of my issues on my friends when I would see them, or when I would go home and see family. I would dump my problems on them as well. And then all your quality time is sort of soaked up by, I need to get all this stuff off my chest. And so for me, seeing a therapist was great because it gave me a weekly place, sometimes twice a week place, to know that I had an outlet for whatever was just on my brain that week, and I could talk to somebody who was a professional, who was there to help, to speak about it objectively, and help me understand why I do the things that I do and how I can overcome some of my own personal issues.
Oh yeah. Plus, if you're like me, if you like talking about yourself, then you're gonna love therapy.
It's like your own little podcast about your life in some ways. Riley, what about you? Have you tried therapy yet?
I mean, I my approach, I'm just sort of always meditating, like at all times. And I because if I don't, I will spin out and go absolutely bonkers. But I think the thing about therapy is that it's like you're saying, it's not just that you're no longer unloading it on everyone else, but you have someone who's qualified to give you some information back and help you to know what to do with all of these thoughts that are swimming around in your head.
There you go. Well, Riley, if you're thinking of starting therapy, listener, if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you got to do is you fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. I also think that's really cool because I tell friends who are starting therapy for the first time, it's kind of like dating. You might not meet your match right away. And don't give up on therapy just because you were like, oh, I didn't like this therapist. There is a therapist out there for you. And
You might have to try a couple. I remember the first therapist I went to see, he did like 2 sports analogies in under 5 minutes. And then I was like, I'm out of here.
Yeah, right. But you don't give up on therapy. You just go,
No.
maybe I need to talk to somebody else who gets me.
Gave up on him. Yeah.
Yeah, so BetterHelp will help you switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/BCC today to get 10% off your first month. That's huge. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/BCC. Well, since we have an expert here, let's get into our UFO update for 2023, or at least where we are at in this time. And let's kick it off with this. Get ready, Riley, because we have some BCC news. I'm not sure if you saw this story, Ryan. This was actually sent in to us from one of our listeners, from a very reputable paper, thedailymail.com. Sadly, there's some the Daily Mail, is one of the only publications that I can easily find these stories. But
I wonder why.
6 whistleblowers who claimed they worked on military UFO programs retrieving and analyzing crash material have come forward to spill their secrets to senior members of Congress. Senior members of Congress have spoken to as many as 6 whistleblowers who claimed they worked on Roswell-style UFO crash retrieval and reverse engineering programs, according to a top attorney, a leading Stanford scientist, and ex-UFO program officials. For decades, it has been the subject of spooky TV shows and sci-fi novels. The theory that the government has alien spacecraft in bunkers somewhere and has been trying to disassemble and understand their technology. But things got a lot more real after Congress passed a law last year creating whistleblower protections for anyone who has worked in such mind-boggling secret programs, suggesting they may be more than just fiction. The 2023 National Defense Authorization Act, signed by President Joe Biden in December, included an amendment requiring the Pentagon to give high-ranking senators classified reports on any previously undisclosed programs relating to unidentified anomalous phenomena, including with respect to material retrieval, material analysis, and reverse engineering. So this was an exclusive interview with DailyMail.com. Daniel Sheehan said that he is in contact with at least 6 former government officials or military contractors who say they worked on such a program. He represents Louis Elizondo, a recurring character in the field who ran a previous incarnation of the UFO office called ATIP. We're all familiar with that by this point. Mm-hmm. He said that some of these half dozen whistleblowers briefed the staff of Senate committees dealing with military intelligence even before the NDAA passed, and may have been the inspiration for senators to include the reverse engineering language. He says there are half a dozen of them that have already gone and talked to them. The Senate staff people were reaching out to some others. And a top Stanford scientist says he's also in touch with the whistleblowers. So what do you think about this news, and how is this related to the recent, the latest batch of congressional hearings we had not too long ago?
So again, Daily Mail, make of it
Yeah.
what you will. They
Yeah.
actually did some pretty decent reporting on this. I know for a fact that how should I put it? I've spoken to at least one of the individuals who testified before this group about a possible UAP retrieval program. This has been the lore of ufology ever since Roswell, that these programs have existed, that craft have been back engineered a la Bob Lazar. But the problem when it comes to this is many of these quote unquote programs that might be working on craft that have been recovered that are unknown in origin, not necessarily extraterrestrial. We just don't know where they come from. They're put into what are called special access programs, and these work very often, outside the purview. Yes, outside the purview of government oversight. So most of these programs are done in the black. They are funded by entities that we possibly will never know of. And also, they do not have to report to Congress. They don't have to tell them what they're doing with what, where, how much, nothing. What we're seeing here now is very, very smart language being put into a bill by Senator Gillibrand in New York and many others. I should say as well, bipartisan, mind you, on both sides of the aisle, have helped make this language where if you ever worked on a black budget program or an SAP that had to do with UFOs or UAP, and you want to talk about it, we will make sure that there's no repercussion for that. You will not be arrested. You will not, lose your whatever, your whatever position you hold. If this is something you want to come forward and talk about, and you think it's for a good reason, we'll do that, and we'll put it into our investigations.
She's actually Kirsten Gillibrand is actually quoted in this story speaking to Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, who's the AARO director, and says, as much Congress, quote, Congress also set up a process whereby people who are subject to non-disclosure agreements preventing them from disclosing what they may have witnessed or participated in could tell you what they know without risk of retribution from the violation of their NDAs. So there you go.
Yeah,
Wow.
It's stunning. And like I mentioned, I do know of one individual who has claimed to have worked on one of these programs. Obviously, I can't give their name, and I know people hate hearing that. I know a guy who knows a guy. I can't tell you who it is. It's anonymous. Blah blah blah. Trust me, bro. But that's kind of where we're at. Thank you, Riley. But this is what I love about AARO. They are retroactively reaching out to people, this group within the Pentagon, AARO, to hear people out. And three of the military witnesses in my new book went and testified before AARO, this new group within the Pentagon. This came literally days after the book went into its final edit. So I was able to squeeze a little bit of that into the book, but this is a developing story. And many of the people who have seen these things in the military finally have somewhere to go to tell these things. So
such
talk
an
about
important
vindication.
For sure, and such an important piece of legislation. This will be probably one of the crown jewels in Biden's administration is this Come Forward Act. It's like, hey, you can talk about what you've seen, what you're working on, and hopefully not have a fear of of losing everything. I'm still sure there's probably a lot of people who, no matter what bill you put forward, they're like, I'm not fucking coming forward. I'm not scared of they're scared of because there's real those are some really dark, shadowy programs that do exist, I'm sure. And I'm sure probably the owners and proprietors of those programs don't give a fuck what Congress says is okay for you to do. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
Absolutely.
something that I found interesting that was a big light bulb moment for me recently. I was listening to Ben Kissel and Henry Zabrowski, shout out Henry, over on Last Podcast on the Left, talking to George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple things that George Knapp talked about on that. I'm sure you're familiar with all this stuff, Ryan. I'm interested in your opinion. One that I had never thought about was that, first of all, one thing I didn't know was that these programs like Arrow, they're small. There are not a lot of people in these programs. It's maybe
Tiny.
3 people running this entire thing.
Mhm.
Because even though Congress has fought for this, it's basically forced the Pentagon into a corner. So the Pentagon is begrudgingly letting this stuff happen and making it a very small office because they're not super excited about digging in and releasing some of this information. Probably a lot of that has to do with the fact that if there is a race, if there is a quest to retrieve, and if we do have this stuff, there is a race to understand this technology, and we're competing with other countries to get a hold of it and understand it first. So there is national security stuff that is real and exists. But the other thing that George Knapp said that I found fucking fascinating was that there's a lot of military top brass who are very Christian, very evangelical, and they don't want to look into the UFO stuff too closely because, one, it challenges a religious purview, or two, they may think that they are engaging with something that is literally demonic and they don't want to engage with it. And that shit blew my fucking mind when George Knapp said that. So there's all these complicated levels, even when you're like, oh yeah, black ops and all the secret stuff, sure. But circling back to the human aspect of it, Ryan, you never stop to think oh fuck, right? There's some military guys that are scared of the devil and they don't want to evoke a demon by studying UFOs.
Absolutely. I can actually add to that, Michael. When I spoke to Leslie Kane, who wrote the now famous New York Times article, she was the one who first spoke to Luis Elizondo, the day after he resigned from the Department of Defense and decided to come forward with his secret Pentagon program, ATIP, that he had run. And when she spoke to Elizondo, she asked, what was one of the major issues? What made you kind of want to resign? And, he had many different reasons, but one of them was the pushback that they were getting from fanatical religious people within the Pentagon and within the Department of Defense who said, we don't want this program funded. We don't want you looking into this stuff. It's demonic. So no more funding. We're pulling the funding for this ATIP program. And it's, whatever. It's going to go to the next 10 churches, in this town. It's not going to a UFO program. We're stepping away from that. So Elizondo ran up against that directly when he was in charge of the original Pentagon UFO program. Is it still going on now? We have heard that, Sean Kirkpatrick and the gentleman who ran the UAP task force, which is a lot more temporary. Arrow is kind of the baby that was born from that. Mm-hmm. When the task force was around, the director of that said, maybe 1 or 2 people, but it didn't really stop us. So we're seeing that kind of shed away, thank God. But look, the government isn't one huge entity. It's not a monolith. You have people with all different belief systems within that. And those couple people could have a lot of influence. So who knows? But yeah, man, very stunning revelation that something like your religious beliefs could stop a UFO program within the U.S. government. Crazy. Crazy.
This idea
wild.
that there's sort of a demonic element, as crazy as it is. I mean, who's to say that there might not be a sliver of truth to that?
We've had guests on this show who think that the alien stuff, the Greys, all this stuff might be some sort of demonic force.
Yeah, I think didn't Diane Pasulka cover this a little bit in her book American Cosmic? You've spoken with her, right, Ryan?
Yes, in fact, Dr. Diana Walsh Pasulka wrote the foreword for my new book.
Oh,
So
incredible!
yeah, she's an incredible person. Her work in this field is just essential, and she has looked a lot into UFOs and religion. And yeah, I mean, this is a woman who went to the secret vault in the Vatican and was able to look at everything they've ever had on space and UFOs and this and that. So yeah, she worked very closely with a lot of these tech entrepreneurs out in Silicon Valley who were really interested in UFOs and wanted to learn more about them, but also were super religious. So this tends to come up so much when it comes to this stuff. And look, I don't blame people. Like, a lot of people see UFOs as a belief system, and do look at it as religion.
Yeah.
And look, UFOs, I tell people there's a place for UFOs in everything: religion, economics, history, psychology, science. So there's room for everyone at the table.
If evangelicals can figure out a way to retcon dinosaurs into the Bible, they'll figure out a way to retcon alien Greys into that.
I did always love this backroom story. I'm sure it's based on a lot of gossip and hearsay, but that some intelligence agencies were tasked decades ago with getting to the bottom of this sort of UFO alien phenomenon, and they got head over heels into occult and ritual practice, and they just opened up a fucking wormhole of new entities, and went full Crowley on that shit, and just like they're like, oh, we fucked up, and they just like opened up a shitstorm.
Basically, all that breaks down to is they just started having group sex. That's really what happened.
Group sex. It's spreading that seed around. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah.
So where are we right now? What's the snapshot? I think when you were last on, let's see, I think UTIP. Wait, what is it called? ATIP. No,
ATIP.
Not ATIP. What came before Arrow? You just mentioned it a moment ago.
Oh, yes, that was the UAP Task Force.
I think UAP Task Force was just starting to wind down, and they were just announcing Arrow when you were here about a year ago. Maybe my timeline is off. But so where are we now? What came out of the latest? I know we got some videos that dropped recently. We're going to take a look at those, but and get your take on them. But what has come out of the most recent conversations between Congress and Arrow?
So we got an official office. While small, like you said, just a few people. I think it's up to, the last time I checked, it's up to about 12 people now. So they're growing. It's getting up there. This is Arrow, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, and it's led by Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, this gentleman who's held many positions in intelligence agencies, Department of Defense. Very, very smart guy, very well spoken. He actually was the one to speak at this Senate UAP hearing that happened this past maybe 2 weeks ago now in Washington, where we got yet another hearing, another historic hearing about UFOs and what this new group Arrow is up to. So we have an official office that's receiving funding to look into UFOs, to identify them and to resolve them. Basically, mitigate the situation, find out what it is, and send that information off to who needs it, whether it's the Navy, whether it's NASA. Let's figure out what these anomalies are. They're currently looking at 650 UFO cases that have come to the attention of Arrow, and one by one going through them and either identifying what's in it or moving it to the unidentified. And then that's when they start looking at it from all different angles.
Here we go again. Yeah.
Here we go again. But at the same time, I'm hopeful, guys. You know, when all of this started, I'm like, man, this Project Blue Book Part 2, it's just it's all just to whitewash it and debunk it away. But I'm not getting that feeling this time. I'm feeling good about it.
How far back are they going, and what kind of are they looking at any classic cases? Like, is anyone going to dive back in and check out what happened at Roswell, or is it just more focused on present day stuff?
Many present day, however, we were told early on that Arrow would be going back retroactively. Like I mentioned, they're interviewing individuals from my book, anyone from the military who's had a UFO sighting or experience. There will eventually be a place for them to go to tell these. But 1945 is the year they're going back to. Do any of you guys know why they chose 1945?
Well, let's see. Roswell was 47. Battle of LA was 41. What happened in 45 that I'm not? I mean, World War II, bombs, nuclear bombs going off. What do we got?
We've got the Trinity UFO crash.
There you go.
Jacques Vallée. This case that happened out in New Mexico at the Trinity site, where the first atomic bombs were exploded, and there was a UFO crash there and a retrieval. So very telling and very interesting that Arrow is going back not to 1947 for reasons we all would assume, Roswell. They're going back even further to a lesser known UFO crash. And could this have to do with these retrieval programs that Arrow might be aware of? That's kind of where I'm leaning right now in terms of the story you brought up. So,
well, and they're probably compelled to make those connections between this vast activity with UFO UAP activity and nuclear bases, and that seems to be ground zero from when it started happening. So I mean, that's probably where a lot of their funding is going to come from for future earmarks, is like, hey, we're trying to put together this puzzle of why people, military personnel, are seeing so much activity over these nuclear armament bases, because that's something we're going to want to know. And that's something that you can connect directly to national security.
Also, maybe one day we'll look back and be like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have set off so many nuclear bombs in a part of the country where the indigenous people used to talk about the sky people and the spiritual people that lived there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, when on the topic of nuclear, I mean, look at the world we live in right now. It's scary. And I think a lot of this has to do with current events in the world too. We have to keep that in mind. We had we have a war going on in Ukraine. We had 3 objects shot down in North America for the first time ever in the history of this country, in the history of NORAD. 3 unidentified objects shot down in the United States. A 4th being a Chinese spy balloon that we know about, but the other 3 remain unexplained. So what were they? Why are we not being told what these objects were? There's probably many reasons for that. However, that's where we're at. We're shooting down, quote unquote, UFOs in the United States right now. So we're living in really sensitive times when it comes to national security, international diplomacy, and UFOs somehow always find themselves smack dab in the middle of those conversations.
Do you think that part of the here we go again aspect of jumping from program to program is because the government is how much of it is about the fact that government is spending money and allocating budgets for something that may ultimately be unknowable? How do you get, what kind of results are we going to get on this stuff? Because I feel like at some point you have to justify the cost for all of this, right?
Absolutely.
So what can they bring to Congress that goes, here you go, short of like, wheeling in a carcass of a gray. You know, like
Or,
what
or
can
Carl
we
Jung's Red Book.
yeah, what can we
Yeah.
actually do here?
Right. Well, the director, Sean Kirkpatrick of Arrow, even said in this recent UAP hearing, national security comes first above all else. Like, that's why this program exists.
Right.
We're trying to find out what these objects are in our skies, whose are they, and what are they capable of. So, with any government funded UFO program, I would say 99.9% of it is about national security. It's about understanding, is this an adversary?
That's
You
also
know?
how you get the money, right?
Yeah, that's how
we've
you get
talked
the
about
money,
it on the
man.
show. It's like anytime we hear them be like, maybe it's the Chinese, maybe it's the Russians, and roll our eyes at it. That's how you get the money. That's how
Yeah.
you get to look into this stuff.
Luis
Well,
Elizondo said, if I didn't put threat in the title of that program, we never would have got the funding for
no
it.
threat, no money. I just saw a recent article from something out of the Space Task Force about sort of, preparation for sort of this, enemy element that might be outside the extraterrestrial in nature. And then it's like, and then immediately bells go off and alarms go off, go like, oh God, Stephen Greer must just be like, just tickled his pink because this is right out of his playbook. You know what I mean? They're preparing for some big fake war. That'll be the next big war. And then we're back into Stephen Greer territory. And it's like, oh God, here we go again.
Yeah.
It's frustrating, man. And, obviously anyone into UFOs wants this program to be about aliens. But at this recent UAP hearing, that word was used once, I think, extraterrestrial. And the question was, has Arrow found anything extraterrestrial? And of course, the director said, we have found no definitive proof with the 650 cases we've looked at that any of this is extraterrestrial. However, and that was a big however that we all hung our hats on.
Right.
He said, we cannot rule it out. And if we find something that we believe could be of extraterrestrial origin, or from somewhere else, not from Earth, we will go through the proper channels to give that to the public. It's not this UFO group's mission to tell us that aliens exist or that UFOs represent extraterrestrials. They'll bring it to NASA and then they'll work from there. Basically, Arrow is a resolution office. Their big thing is we're going to identify these things, and then it's in SCP, someone else's problem. They give it to whoever needs it for whatever purpose. Intelligence, military, NASA, the benefit of humanity, I hope. But that's probably the last thing. On the list of priorities, unfortunately.
Here's how I see it, right? Until worldwide, I mean, mostly us here in America, can start to bring back this idea of spirit back into matter, that we have completely expelled spirit from the talk of our science rooms, of our congressmen, of like, so we have this idea that, there is no spiritual element at play. And if there is, we don't want to talk about it. You know what I mean? But until you start like getting to know people like John Mack, who was a Harvard-trained psychologist who looked at this probably closer than anybody, talking to more potential abductees, and even guys like Carl Jung, and like when they look at it, they can come to pretty quick ideas about what this could be and who we are as a species. I guess what I'm trying to say is like, when will this government entity get the idea that, hey, maybe we should start coming at this from a psychological or a spiritual nature if we ever want to get to the bottom of it? Because I think if we're just constantly looking for nuts and bolts craft and threats from Zeta Reticuli, we're never going to get closer to what this phenomenon really is.
Yeah, man. And I love the work of John Mack, and I love when people like him can admit these things, that they were fundamentally changed by the research and the revelations that they came across when looking into UFOs. I've had those moments. Mm-hmm. I've had those kind of existential moments of, wow, the world is far stranger than I ever thought. UFOs are more than I ever imagine they could be. And even people who've worked in these government funded UFO programs have come out on the other side. J. Allen Hynek probably being the primary example, sent into Project Blue Book to debunk everything and find a explanation for it, to literally tell the world aliens aren't coming to Earth. Guys, calm down. And coming out on the other side of Project Blue Book saying, I think aliens are coming to Earth.
Right,
It's very powerful. No matter what you think UFOs are or aren't, they do something to you. They impact you in ways you may never truly fully understand until you've actually seen one of these things and feel that power that they can often represent or harness, as Jacques Vallée would say. So yeah, it is. It's very powerful. Will we ever get to that point, Bryce, where like a government program will look into those aspects of it? I don't know, but my hope is that the people who worked on those programs will come out of it on the other side, like J. Allen Hynek did, and maybe we'll someday get a group who will look at it those ways. But right now, man, threat.
That's how you get the money. Bigfoot Collectors Club is brought to you by Dave. 2023 is BCC's year of manifestation. Maybe you're working on your goal of revising your budget or tackling your debt, but you can't always prepare for the unexpected. That's where Dave comes in. What's Dave? Who's Dave?
Dave is the banking app that could help you get up to $500 instantly with extra cash.
If you're living paycheck to paycheck or struggling to make ends meet, it can be really stressful. With Dave, you can get your money sooner and take a little edge off that anxiety about how much money you have to get through the week.
We've all been there. You have an unexpected medical expense or you get into a fender bender, but you don't have the money to pay for it immediately. Now, Dave can help get you out of a pinch when you really need it.
Listen, you're talking to two fellas here that are freelance artists. We know the feeling of being in a bit of a cash pinch from time to time.
Absolutely. I've definitely run bank accounts all the way down and credit cards all the way up, and I've been there and back again several times over trying to tackle the impossible careers of musician, filmmaker, and podcaster.
With Dave, there's no interest, late fees, or credit check. And that's more money to fill your tank, finally get your car repaired, or catch up on bills without having to wait for your next paycheck.
Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to get the financial relief they need with extra cash. So if you're in a pinch and need some extra help, download Dave and think of it as a helping hand from future you.
Download the Dave app from the App Store right now or go to dave.com/BCC. That's dave.com/BCC. Sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking services provided by Evolve Bank and Trust. Member FDIC. All right. Let's wrap up this episode by taking a look at some recent UFO, or you might say UAP videos. Now, before we get to the link I put into the chat here, I slid into your boys' DMs over on Instagram. There was a video that Riley sent me. Bryce, grab your phone and pull up this. Now, this is from a link from Time Magazine's Instagram Reels, but it shows some of the videos that came out recently at the Arrow congressional hearings, I believe, on April 19th.
Oh, yeah, I've seen this. Yeah.
These are this first clip, and we'll put these in our Instagram. Everybody go to at Bigfoot Collectors Club on Instagram. This first little collection of videos that are in this reel show declassified U.S. footage of unidentified objects in the Middle East and South Asia. And it opens with this overhead, kind of looks like a drone cam, and you see a silver ball fly over what I think is a military installation of some kind. I'm not sure. And then we have some grainy black and white footage of UFOs buzzing airplanes, presumably at night. Take a look at these, Ryan. I know you've talked about these on your show already, but what's your takeaway from this set of videos here?
Yeah, so these were shown at the recent Senate UAP hearing. To the surprise of many, we didn't think we were going to get kind of any evidence or anything like that. So it was pretty cool to finally see some new UAP video come out. We've been looking at the same damn Tic Tac video for the past
Yeah.
5-6 years
Yeah.
now.
Got
at
to
this
bring some
point.
videos to show and tell. Yeah.
I know,
Yeah.
man. Come on. So yeah, one of them was identifiable, like you mentioned. It was an aircraft that they captured, and they kind of went through the process of how they identified it.
Now,
which
which
was
one
cool.
was that? Which one was that?
That was the non-orb.
Okay.
So the other video they showed, they were able to identify as an actual conventional aircraft, and they went through the methodology of how they explain that, which was cool. We got to see how Arrow is working, what they
Got it.
do to kind of, and this was their example. However, the second video they showed was a still unidentifiable thing in the sky, and that
It-
was this orb over the Middle East.
Right, that silver
Wow.
ball looking thing, right?
Yeah, no signs of visible propulsion, moving very quickly, supposedly metallic. And this was caught by a Reaper drone, actually, which is a very sophisticated drone system that we use now for surveillance and video. And there was not enough data to sufficiently identify what this thing was or wasn't. So
Wow.
I think that was kind of the big thing to come out of this video, Michael, was this is an example of what Arrow is looking at. And with not enough sufficient data, they can't really come up with an explanation. So what they need is more data. What they need is the data from whatever military branch recorded this. And I'll end with this. The big issue right now for Arrow is they have what is known as Title 10 clearance. That is as low can be in terms of what they're
Got it.
getting
Oh.
Got it.
from DOE, CIA, NSA. It's like table scraps, man. What they need is Title 50. That goes for every military branch, every intelligence agency.
So they can compare notes to what they have, right?
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
man. It's like, why are we working on a low information zone of data within a government funded UFO program? So right now they're trying to get more clearance to be able to truly understand and identify the things that they're looking at. So this orb was one of those.
Do you think
Got
like
it.
on a Monday meeting at the office with their feeling that their hands are tired, their hands are tied, they're like, okay, guys, to get a little bit more data, we're going to be showing Flight of the Navigator. So grab a coffee, have a seat, just, enjoy the show, and let's do some notes after, okay?
It's
Let's do
It's
some
like
good work
the-
here, people.
it's like those days in elementary school when the teacher was like hungover and you would just watch like
Rolls in
Avatar.
the video. Right.
Yeah.
EP.
Yes.
Oh man, yeah, it was an interesting video, and it's strikingly similar to a video that Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp put out a few months
Yes.
ago.
Yes,
So
in fact, I
what's
thought it was
going
the
on there?
same one, which was wild.
Yeah, Jeremy was able to prove that it was different location. Could be the same anomaly. We just
Mhm.
don't know. We lack the sufficient data to make an explanation out of it. So that's what Jeremy's running up against too. He put this video out to the public because the UAP task force was not able to explain it. So maybe the public can. So that's the kind of transparency we need from Arrow. And that's the kind of transparency Arrow is not getting from its own government entities. So weird power struggle going on right now when it comes to Arrow and what they're capable of doing. And again, this orb video you brought up is a prime example of that.
Now, this other video is cool. It's a civilian video. So we're kind of going over to something that somebody has caught on their own camera in an airplane. This was taken by a woman flying in a private plane. I put this link in the chat here, guys. So pull this one up and let me know what you think about this one. This is this is one of those where
model
like
who shot this one, right? I've heard about this. I saw this one. This is
Supposedly.
supposedly. All right.
I've
so
got
we're
an
gonna-
update on that.
Okay, great. So let's
Oh,
look at
okay.
the video first. It's up on YouTube. We'll put the link in the show notes and we'll put it up on Instagram if we can. There is basically it's taken from the passenger a window of a small plane, and you see this silvery. It almost looks like a beignet. I'm gonna say it looks like a silver beignet flying past the cockpit there. And it goes by really quickly, and then it slows down. You can get a sense of the shape of this thing. But I'm curious, I want to hear what all your reactions are. Let's start with Riley and Bryce, and then let's hear your update, Mr. Sprague.
I mean,
Sure.
if it's real, it's incredible. Like, because it's a pretty clear image of this, like, very much metallic, reflective, sort of interesting, organic shaped object moving very quickly with no clear propulsion. So, if this is a real thing, I'm very impressed by it. That's my take.
Yeah, I like
Bryce,
I
what do
like
you
the
think?
video too. It looks good to me.
That would make it
Wait.
into Bryce's secret stash 100%.
Oh,
That
for
that
sure.
would totally qualify for a secret stash video.
Dank stash.
And then Bryce would then go down another rabbit hole looking up the model who took it.
Let me do some background checking. Oh, there's some stuff I don't like.
Just doing some research. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
So what do you got for us, Ryan?
Okay. So you're right. If this is real, this is the video we've been waiting for. It's one of the clearest videos I've ever seen of a UFO flying right past a pilot, past an aircraft. It's a dream come true. Smoking gun right here. However, there's a lot of issue with this. The first being the person who claimed to have taken it. This was a woman named Valentina Velez, a supermodel in Colombia. So that immediately caught a lot of people's attention. And they're like, what? She posted it on her Instagram story. And everyone was like, oh my God, like this is crazy. What is this? And the video went viral. Like literally everyone was talking about it in the UFO field, outside of the UFO field, breaking it down frame by frame. And of course, everyone had, what they thought it was. Some thought it was a balloon. Some thought it was a drone. Some thought it was, an intergalactic manta ray.
Yeah.
And insert theory here. Like your guess is just as good as mine at what this was. So I did a little bit of digging, and I reached out to Valentina, and asked her. I said, "Do you want to comment on this? Everyone's kind of putting words in your mouth and like saying you're lying about this, and that you didn't take this, that." And all I got was a response that said, "No." Period. So, okay, I wiped my hands clean of it. Like, she doesn't want to talk about it. That's totally fine. So I then reached out to Jaime Maussan, the famous, South American UFO researcher. And he actually was able to, and say what you will about Jaime Maussan. I know a lot of people, don't take this dude too seriously. Yeah. But he was able, and I was able to also confirm this, track down the actual pilot who filmed this.
Oh, wow.
So if Valentina is connected to this, we don't exactly know how, but she was not the pilot, and she was not the one to record this.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So a lot of people think maybe she somehow got a hold of the footage and knew if she threw this up on her Instagram story,
Trying to spike those likes.
3 million followers instantly.
Or if somebody wants to get it out there, give it to a model with a nice social following, and it'll go viral.
Good point. Well, apparently the person who did take it was a gentleman. Where is it? I have his name here.
This is why we get an intrepid reporter on the show.
I try.
The answers we're looking for.
I try, guys. So Valentina says that she recorded this on April 4th of this year. We tracked down, I should say Jaime Maussan tracked down. I spoke to the gentleman very briefly. One Jorge Arteaga in Colombia. And he says he took this video in May of 2022.
Okay.
So huge discrepancy. But his account of this is pretty dramatic. I've got his quotes here if you want me to read it. If we have time.
Please.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, cool. I'll try to breeze through
Unless Valentina would object. I mean,
No.
it. She would just say no, period. Yeah.
no, do not read.
Unless you give me 100,000 followers. Okay. So Jorge says, the video is authentic. It was recorded by me. First, there was an approach with the object that was static, floating in a specific point between Medellin and Santa Fe. It passed me by the side with a co-pilot who came with me. We were approaching Medellin at the moment the object moved and approached us when that happens. So I thought maybe Valentino was his co-pilot, but he did negate that by saying, Daniel, my co-pilot. I asked him, did you see this? And he said, yes. And what else? So I turn around, and when I turn the 360, which is the first video I have, I see the static object floating. When I'm recording the video everyone's seen, the alleged UFO moves a bit, so I start hunting it with the plane. And when I'm getting closer to it, the object moves towards us at the moment, and when I dodge it, I am flying at 130 to 140 knots at a speed with respect to 150 knots if we do the multiplication. It is more than 300 kilometers per hour.
Whoa.
That's what I got.
Yeah. That's it. Okay.
That
So we're all on the
checks
same
out.
page here.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Good. That tracks. His last quote here was, I passed very close to that, and if it had been a balloon, no more than the mere wake of the plane would have finished it off or taken it from the point where it was.
Sure.
That's why I stayed. And I didn't go away. And it didn't. And I said, I have to look for it, and it can't be a solar balloon. The object does not have a strip. It has nothing. A helium balloon does not reach up there. I actually felt fear. This is not any kind of balloon or a drone, nor an object known to me. So that's straight from Jorge.
Wild.
Nice work, Sprague.
Yeah, well
Woo!
done.
Most of that's Jaime Musan. I have to admit that. But
Don't ever
it's
watch
important.
any
a
of
guy
my
knows a
secret
guy.
stash videos. I don't need you debunking my secret stash videos from now.
I won't. I promise.
Do you
Amazing
know, and
stuff.
Do you know, maybe you don't, but was there any like corroboration with instrumentation on that object, or like air traffic control, or anything other than the eyewitness account? Was there any kind of instrumentation?
Working on it. Definitely
All right.
working on it right now.
Got to come back.
Yes, man. There's a huge movement right now in the commercial air traffic world, with commercial pilots coming forward and having somewhere to report their sightings.
Yeah.
Aero and whatnot is just for military, but how many commercial flights are there a day just in the United States alone? And Medellin is a high activity area for UFOs. So if we can get in touch with whoever takes reports there, hopefully we can get more of that data. Riley, I'm working on it, man.
Awesome. I can't wait to hear what you find.
Cool stuff. We love it. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us on the show. It's so great to have you back. We will obviously continue to bring you back at least once a year so we can take a snapshot like we did
so
of where things
informative,
are in
man.
the UFO field. This is so great. Remind people or tell people where they can remind people what the name of the book is and where they can find it.
Oh, thanks, guys. No, trust me, this is like my Christmas. I love coming on here and unwrapping these presents with you guys. The book, Stories from Somewhere in the Skies, is available on Amazon in paperback and ebook right now. You can just go there to find it. I do a weekly live stream now where I break down all the UFO news of the week and podcast highlights of the week.
Nice.
So you can find that on my YouTube channel. It's cool. It's like, your one-stop shop for anything UFOs going on. And trust me, it's bigger than ever. So we got plenty to talk about every
You're
Sunday.
busy. Busy
And
these
then,
days.
what else? I'm on the current season of Ancient Aliens. So if you're still into that show, 19 seasons later,
Wow,
you
amazing.
can catch me over on there talking about UFOs and I don't know. They're up to it's not even Ancient Aliens anymore. It's just aliens. We're up to Pentagon stuff at this
It's
point.
like 2015. What is going on?
Try 2022, man.
Oh my
It's
God.
crazy.
Amazing. I love
That's
it.
Awesome.
great, man. Well,
That's
you're
so cool.
such a great and respected voice for the field, and we're lucky to have known you. And yeah, man, everybody's lucky to have you as well. So
Yeah,
keep doing
and
that
if
great
you're
work,
listening-
Sprague.
If you're listening to BCC on your favorite podcast app, you go over to Somewhere in the Skies and you click follow. You gotta look. You gotta kill time between episodes. You might as well listen to Ryan's show. It's great, and it's you think we do research on this show? Come on, forget it.
Aw.
We're clowns.
we do like book reports. He does
Yeah.
research.
Yeah.
Stop. No, you guys, I'm such a big fan of your work, and you constantly inspire me. In fact, you've inspired me to do my own expose on the Men in Black. So, Michael, I'm reaching out
Awesome.
to you, man. We're finally
Okay.
going to get that going.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it, man.
I'm around. Thanks, Ryan. We love you, man. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, we're putting some of this UFO talk to rest for now. I guess our wet, hot alien spring has officially come to an end. But like I said, we have some fun stuff coming up this summer, so stay tuned for that. Don't forget to click that follow button on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app so you never miss a single episode of BCC. And trust me, you're not going to want to miss what's coming up in June, July, and August. We want to hear from you, so rate and review while you are there. If you drop us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, we might read it on the show, like this one.
This is from Ranger 4315. Great show. Makes the bad days a lot better. Love these guys. Keep up the great work. Thank you for the great content. 1,000 stars. 5 stars.
What?
Oh, nice.
Love it.
All right.
Ranger,
Appreciate that review. Hell yeah.
I wonder if they're a national parks ranger. I wonder if they have Ranger, if you're listening, send in some Bigfoot stories at BigfootCollectorsClub@gmail.com. And that actually goes for all of you. If you have any good Sasquatch stories, Bigfoot encounter stories, we want them. So send them into BigfootCollectorsClub@gmail.com and label it Bigfoot story. Listen, if it comes from an uncle, a grandpa, a grandma, passed down through generations, if it didn't happen
a
to you,
supermodel.
a supermodel in an airplane, we want to hear about it. So get those into us, okay? And like I said, follow us on Instagram at Bigfoot Collectors Club and on TikTok at BCC Pod. And if you've caught up on the show, we had a lot of people binging this spring, and you're like, damn it, now I'm all out. Well, guess what? There's a whole hell of a lot more BCC waiting for you on our Patreon, BCC The Other Side. Unlock 3 bonus episodes every month, plus our entire backlog over there, and you can upgrade to the Cosmic tier, where you'll unlock 3 additional BCC soundtracks and occasionally some original music and full albums by super producer Riley. So head over to patreon.com/Bigfoot Collectors Club to check that out. And another bonus, if you do, we're going to shout your name out on the air. Let's hear some Patreon shout outs of the week. Aaron Kubish, Cosmeteer.
Thank you, Aaron. Welcome.
Big Blue Bear Boy.
Thank you, Quadruple B.
Sarah Wall.
Thanks, Sarah.
Robin Peacock.
Thanks, Robin.
Devin Ritter.
Thank you.
Spencer Duncan Cool.
Thank you, Spencer.
Jonathan Castro, Cosmeteer.
Thank you and welcome.
Brett Rudy.
Thanks, Brett.
And these last 2, some of my favorite names so far, Scree. Just Scree.
Thanks, Scree.
And Snake 2000. Sorry, let me take this back. Snake 2802.
What up, Snake?
Thank
a
you
cool
so much,
name.
guys. All of these are folks that have joined the Patreon, BCC The Other Side. We appreciate it. As for me, old McMills, follow me on Instagram at McMills, 2 Z's. And that's all I got right now. Bryce, Riley, what about you guys?
Yeah, I'm over on those socials. Hit me up on Instagram at Mr. Bryce Johnson and on Twitter at Bryce O. Johnson.
And I'm Peace Drone on Instagram. And I just wanted to say on the subject of the Patreon, I've done this weirdly for 2 people this week. You can add the RSS to your podcast app.
Yes.
So you don't have to use the Patreon app, and it just shows up like a normal podcast. I know it sounds complicated. It is 2 clicks and it's very simple.
Yeah.
So just if you don't want to use the Patreon app, you could just get it in your podcast feed, and it's a better experience. So
you will find when you sign up, you get a personal RSS link. All you got to do is copy and paste that. You go to your favorite podcast app. I believe on Apple, it says add show by URL. You pull that up. You paste the link in there, and boom, the Patreon BCC The Other Side shows up as a literal parallel podcast to Bigfoot Collectors Club. So you have
Killer.
your BCC in your feed, and on Fridays, when 3 out of the 4 or 5 Fridays of every month, boom, you got a new episode of BCC The Other Side right there. Also featuring rad artwork by Ryan Smallman.
Could be.
So
easier.
they
You
even
don't have to
appear.
keep up
They
with
pop
it.
up differently
Just
in your
pops
feed. You
You
pop
get-
up differently.
yeah,
You know
it's
which
got
one
its
you're
own art.
listening to.
You'll love it. Just do it.
Yeah, it's
RSS feed. Quick googs.
There
You
you
got it.
Yeah. Little public
That's my
service
plug.
announcement from Mr. Riley. I want to thank Ryan Sprague one last time for being on the show. We're actually going to cross over to BCC The Other Side right now to talk about some classic high strangeness in the state of Ohio. If we don't see you over there, we will see you back here next week for an all-new episode of Bigfoot Collectors Club. Until then, good night.
And go get regressed.
Bye.
Bigfoot Collectors Club is produced by Riley Bray and Michael McMillan and scored and engineered by Riley Bray. Our theme song, Come Alone, is by Suneaters, courtesy of Lotuspool Records. Do us a favor and support the show and unlock 3 bonus episodes every month by becoming a member of our Patreon, BCC The Other Side, which can be found at patreon.com/Bigfoot Collectors Club.